Hi, John. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is wonderful. We're drinking terrible hotel coffee right now.
Is it terrible? I can't tell.
It's pretty bad, yeah, but that's okay. It's really fun because we are on a little getaway, a very quick getaway. Everything's closed. Nothing is really reopening yet, but this has been an incredibly restorative time for our marriage. We have our in-laws watching our kids, and it's so nice to feel like we're dating again. So I'm looking forward to taking a little walk down memory lane with you about just our story, our dating story, as well as we're going to talk about online dating. So let's pick up. If you want to hear our stories, John shared his story on the very first episode of Called and Caffeinated, and I shared mine. I want to say it was something like episode 8. So you can go back and hear the before we met each other stories, and then we're just going to pick up from that point. So I want to say for myself that discerning religious life was the best thing I could have done for our marriage. What do you think about that? Because we both discerned religious life before we met each other.
Yeah, I've heard you say before in talks and stuff that it kind of laid the groundwork for embracing whatever vocation God had in store for you.
Yeah.
Really like making whatever you did next an offering to God, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It really solidified my relationship with God such that I could hear His voice and recognize His voice. I understood I had a foundation that He loves me no matter what. So that led to an understanding that your vocation is a gift to another person. It's not, I'm going to be a princess on my wedding day and everything's going to be about me. And of course we're all a work in progress. It's not like I arrived at this place of perfection. It's just more of an understanding that once I enter my vocation, I'm giving of myself, rather than I want someone so that I don't have to feel lonely, because that part of my heart was already taken care of in a big way by God.
And like you said, discernment is so much a process of examining your own desires, and identifying which are deeper and pure or more real, more godly, and like the discernment of married life and a spouse is so wrapped up in all these kind of preconceptions about what we want, what we are attracted to. There's like a lot of selfishness potentially mixed in with that, so trying to put all that kind of stuff in its proper place, and also look for God and God's will in your spouse and your vocation.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Cool.
So let's go to February or March 2015, which was the month before we met. John, you joined Catholic Match around that time, and before you went online, so you finished your discernment process of religious life, did you know already that religious life wasn't for you? And if so, how did you know that when you started dating online? Did you sort of finish discerning religious life and then decide I'm going to be married? Or was it that you met me and then decided, I think I'm called to be married?
Right, yeah. It wasn't, I hadn't discounted anything at that point. Like I had felt pretty convinced that I was called to religious life for many years, and then after discerning with the Carthusians, I was I just didn't know. I had no idea. Like I was still inclined to think that I was called to some kind of religious life, but I didn't feel a specific call to any order. And so it was about a year and a half of just not feeling a specific call anywhere, and asking for one and hoping for one and looking for one, but not finding it. And so I guess it was just a period of like letting God kind of clean some of that out and prepare me for whatever was coming next, which was a hottie. So yeah.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. For myself, I felt very strongly called to marriage. I did feel like there was a point at which I was done discerning religious life, and for me that was feeling a desire for marriage for many months, and then finally just saying, okay, God, I'm gonna be open to dating again in a month. This was in November 2014. I said I'll be open to dating in December 2014 if I still feel this desire, because I had felt it for months and months. And so for a month I went to daily mass and I did a holy hour, and I really tried to stay close to the Lord. And then I said I'm just gonna be open to dating, at this point. And by the end of that month I felt very confirmed in my desire to start dating again, with the understanding that if the Lord called me back to religious life, He was going to change my heart. I was open to it. And so I went on Catholic Match a little before you, And it's a bit of a crazy world sometimes, this online dating world. We've had a lot of questions about online dating. We're going to get into that in just a second, but there was a particular moment that I want to pull out because I think it was a huge part of my finding you. I went to this young adult brunch where this married couple gave a talk, and the woman was talking about how she felt very strongly called to marriage, but I think she was in Rome working with seminarians, and so there was no one in her eligible in her dating pool in her immediate circle. So she said she just was very frustrated, and she finally just very simply went before the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament, and she just said, I'm ready. Whatever you want me to change in my life, my job, my location, whatever it is, I'm ready. Like, I'm just totally open. Bring me my man, bring me my husband whenever you want, Lord. And she said that she met her husband a couple of weeks later. And I was in that place myself. I was very much in that place of frustration. Like, where's the guy? I know a lot of men, but they're not interested in dating me. What is happening? And so after that brunch, I immediately went to a church and I just sat in front of the Blessed Sacrament and said, Lord, I am ready. I will change. I will move away from New York City. I will, I was living on Long Island at that point, but I still went into New York City frequently to visit my friends. I said, I will move my life. I will change my job. I will do whatever. I want this to come first. And I think it was that willingness that actually really was what brought us together. Because I actually met John the next day online, not knowing that he was my husband, and we didn't meet in person until a month after that. But the Lord took me at my word and said, okay, we're going to do this now. So online dating, let's talk about that. Do you want to give a few etiquette tips or do's and don'ts for guys as you're setting up your profile? First of all,
I'll give it a shot.
Okay. We endorse online dating, right?
Yeah.
I think we have to.
It's a great option for, today, because there are so few Catholics and many fewer serious Catholics that if that's what you're looking for, it's going to be really hard to find them outside of online dating. So it worked great for us. There are concerns that come along with that, I think, and temptations and issues and stuff. But overall, I can't argue with the results. So.
Amen to that. And we know a lot of people who have met online. A lot of really good, solid couples who are super happy together. And we ask them how they met, and they say online. We're like, oh, us too. So right. Yeah, I totally. One thing as a woman that was so refreshing for me about being on an online dating site was that when I met a guy in person, we knew it was a date. We had set this up as we were establishing that we are discerning marriage with one another, and we chose to go with CatholicMatch.com, which I think was a good option too, because they ask you those questions about your orthodoxy levels. Sure. Do you believe in this and this and this? These 8 doctrines of the church that are very important. I had a rule for myself. I was like, I'm just not interested in considering someone who doesn't say yes to all of those things. Mm-hmm. So it was this great filtering where I knew that I was meeting someone who may or may not be my spouse, but at least they're a serious Catholic and we know we're on a date, which nowadays that is super confusing. There's a lot of people who just want to hang out and they never specify if this is a date or what. So so I just thought that was very refreshing. That's a huge plus in my mind, is it filters through a lot of the confusion. So back to my original question for you. Yeah. As you're setting up your profile as a man, what would you recommend? And also messaging with women, what would you recommend?
One thing I noticed, so I think I mentioned the first time I talked with you about this, I was only on there for a pretty brief period of time before I met Stacey. Mm-hmm. So I have a limited, idea of what's involved in,
To be exact, I think it was one day. It was 1 day. It was the first day you joined.
It was 1 day before I met Stacey.
Yeah.
And then I was on there for a little while afterwards. But one thing I noticed is, for me it worked well. For me it just felt kind of creepy to be looking at people's, pages and profiles and creeping on them and stuff. And
do you think so though? Because we invited that.
I know
we set up a profile.
That's what it's meant. Mm-hmm. That's what it's meant for. It's not like it's wrong. It just feels weird to me. So
there's definitely it feels like being on Facebook, but you're dating. Right. Yeah.
The thing with Facebook is these people already, mm-hmm. and you're just finding out more about them, which is in a way kind of not as weird. but I found you form such an image or conception of somebody before you meet them by looking at their profile.
Right.
And you can fall in love with that conception or decide that conception is, not the kind of person you'd ever fall in love with, when that might not actually be the case.
That's a good point.
Like, so I tried to limit myself to just like looking at somebody's profile enough to know, do I want to go on a date with this person or not? If I do, then let's, initiate this messaging thing, try to get together and find out who you actually are, because even the little bit that I saw on your profile, which I think is like half of what you'd even written, I didn't know she was on a TV show and stuff before.
He didn't read that far into the profile.
No, I got to Unicycle and St. Therese, and I was like, this is a definite maybe. But yeah, like I had an idea of who you were before I met you, and it took a little while to rid myself of that and to see you more fully and purely, I guess. And I'm glad I did, but like you're so much better than I thought you were. And
thank you.
Yeah, so it's a temptation to hold on to that idea of who you think somebody is, and
sure.
You can even feel like resentful if they're not that person, or if you feel like they misrepresented themselves or something like that.
Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the hardest things about online dating is you get this idea in your mind of this person, and you sort of fall in love with that person really quickly, and you start planning out, this is from my perspective, you start planning out your future children, what they're going to look like. Oh, we could live in this house, we could live in this area of the country, oh, I'll totally move to wherever he is. And you have all of that, and maybe he hasn't even messaged you back, or maybe you're just stuck in this sort of pattern of like not getting off the ground with communication. And that is a hard thing. And I want to validate that. One thing that you did that I really appreciated was you took our communication from online to in person as soon as possible. And I loved that because it gave me a chance to really get to know the real you. And you also took the initiation to say, I will come from Pennsylvania to Long Island. I will drive 6 hours to come and meet you. And it made it easy for me. It made it simple. There wasn't this, right from the very first piece of communication, I felt like I was being pursued, which was what I had already decided that I wanted. I didn't want to have to drag someone along. I'm a very type A, go-getter kind of person, and I was like, if I'm the dominant one in the relationship, if he can't show initiative to ask me on a date, if I'm the one who has to say, hey, let's meet up in person, I'm not going to do that. It was really hard, but I said, I want to be, I want someone who can show that he can keep up with me in a way, and take his own initiative. And so that was really nice that I didn't have to force you to do anything. You just took that role and that responsibility.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's see. With online dating, there's.
Can I say another thing?
Yeah, go for it.
Encourage me. I would encourage anybody who tries it to just really enjoy it and appreciate the fact that like this is such a blessing that we get to do this, to have access to just like wonderful Catholic women or Catholic men that are all serious about their faith. Hopefully you can kind of filter out the ones that aren't serious about it, and just enjoy messaging them and talking to them, and be grateful for like every interaction, because it doesn't have to go anywhere necessarily. It's just really good to be interacting with like brothers and sisters in Christ. It's really cool, and
it's a really good perspective.
Only good things are going to come of it if you approach it in that way, I think.
Right. Yeah, if you notice that your heart is getting dragged through the mud just by the simple fact of not getting messaged back by someone, or feeling like you should have more people messaging you than are messaging you. If your heart is lonely, and if you're approaching this from a very sort of a feeling of desperation, which no matter how strong we are, we all have that. Like, even if we're secure and confident in ourselves, it does feel uncomfortable to put yourself out there in that way with the potential of rejection. It's a risk. Yeah. And I think that's a really good perspective. Like, just the fact that the platform exists is good in and of itself. And I would say that if you're approaching it with a feeling of sadness or desperation, that's an invitation that God wants you to go to Him. And He's saying, there's a loneliness in your heart that really no person could fulfill.
Right.
I'm here for you. I want to be that bedrock for you. I want to be that first, that first person in your life. And even as I was messaging, I totally did that too. Even though I really felt like, I knew Jesus was my beloved. I knew I was secure. I knew I was found by Him. But there still is that desire for human validation.
Sure.
Another thing I think to address with online dating is that it can get really overwhelming. As a woman, I think a lot of men did want to pursue, they did want to initiate a conversation, and that was a wonderful thing. but when you're new on the site, they put you at the top of all the search engines for everybody, and so you get a ton of messages. At least I did. I got a lot of messages on the very first day, and it was overwhelming. It was like, who do I even respond to? And this would be a tip for the gentlemen out there who maybe are considering going online. I would say, I've heard this from women, and this was my experience. I wanted a man to say pretty quickly, hey, let's move this to, may I call you on the phone, and then may I meet up with you in person? Because I didn't want to spend every night of the week setting these, 25,000 word essays to a man. And if you're messaging multiple guys and you're like, this is such a time suck for me. Right. Like I'm sitting in front of my computer. I'm not even talking to anybody. I'm just like, we're going back and forth. I don't even know where this is leading.
Yeah, totally.
A few messages are great. And then if you're feeling good about it, just say, yeah, let's take this to the next level. So I would invite the gentleman to do that. Another thing I wanted to talk about is there's a question of like, should a woman initiate conversation? Should a woman initiate, just to let a guy know that she's out there? I say, yeah, totally. What I did was I had a little rule for myself, which was that I would send an emoji to a guy. Everyone is a little bit different, but I was like, if I see a guy I'm interested in, maybe he hasn't found my profile. Maybe he's looking on different filters than I am, so he's not going to find me. If I see a guy who looks like he's, a good potential match, I'll send him an emoji. If he responds with a message, if he sends me back an emoji, then we're not going many places from there. But if he sends me a message back like, hey, how are you? I'd like, tell me more about yourself or something like that, I just decided that was something that I was willing to do. So I was actually the first one who reached out to John with an emoji, and I think it was during Lent. So did I send you the little fish sandwich emoji?
The fish one. Fortunately, it was not the fish one.
We might not be here if it was the fish sandwich emoji.
It was just it's a blushing smiley face, coquettish. It's,
you know me.
Yeah, stole my heart.
Well, I saw that it was John's first day on the site, and I thought maybe he's not going to find me. There's so many profiles out there. He's in Pennsylvania, I'm on Long Island, but I really like the look of his face and what sparse information there was about you. And I thought maybe this is just a guy who I would like to meet. And another tip for the gentleman out there, I think maybe some girls do this too. I could only see men's profiles, so I really can only give advice to men. I think it's probably more likely that girls really prepare like a full profile. They're like, here's a picture of me holding my nieces and nephews so you can get an idea of what that's going to be like. Here's a picture of me with my family. Here's a picture of me out hiking with friends and doing all these fun things. And here's my like senior picture where I look my best. Girls will like, and they'll do all the information about themselves. At least that's what I did. For the guys, I can't tell you the number of guys who were like, I was like, I'm not even gonna, like, I can't even see what you look like from your profile. All the pictures were like dark sunglasses and a baseball hat pulled down, and like maybe, or like a group photo where it's like, I don't even know which one you are in the photo. There's 1,200 people in this photo. Which one are you? And they're just like a little head in the background.
Probably the least attractive one there. They wouldn't have included that specific group. I don't know. That's fair.
And I mean, and I just think if you're trying to make a first point of contact with someone and just say, here I am, be who you are. Have a friend take a photo of you. We're living in the digital age where there's so many cameras. Everyone has a camera on their phone. Just have a friend take a picture of you. And if you're not, Brad Pitt, that's fine, because whoever you're going to end up with is going to love you for who you are anyway. And I kept telling the Lord, I was like, Jesus, I only need one. Because it can get so overwhelming, and sometimes you're like, I just don't know if I keep messaging all these people back, if I just say, hey, I'm not interested in messaging you anymore unless you want to meet up in person, what do I even do with this? And I just kept saying to the Lord, like, Lord, just bring me that one. Just please make it really clear who that one is. Yeah.
This is backing up a little bit, but I would just say you really have to make sure you're only using it as a stepping stone. Because I don't know, to just like continually message somebody and avoid meeting in person or just like not initiate that is such sissy stuff, and it's lame.
Speaking of kind of how our story went, just like what you're saying there, you actually had to message me 3 times before I answered. So I sent him an emoji. He messaged me back the next day. I was the reason that he moved from free profile into I'm going to put down some money for this.
That's right.
And he messaged me, and I didn't respond because I had stopped signing into my account. I had reached that point of this orphan spirit of I am feeling desperate. I'm feeling my little heart is being dragged through the mud. I just have to quit this for a minute. So I had stopped messaging anybody. I had stopped signing into the site for like 3 weeks. And then I signed back in. And God bless John. He had 3 messages spaced like a week apart, so it wasn't creepy. But he had sent me 3 messages over the course of 3 weeks saying like, hey, I would really love, I'd love to meet you. Tell me to stop messaging you if you want me to, but if you want, I would be happy to come meet you.
Kind of ticked. Maybe I mentioned this before, but kind of ticked that she disappeared after I paid for this service, because I was pretty convinced that she was just like a fictitious Catholic match, like perfect girl. That like automatically sends coquettish emojis to people so that they would pay money for this thing.
I'm a robot.
So it's like,
really sweet.
Stop playing with me.
You're really sweet. So yeah, no, I'm real though. Here I am. But I think it's indicative that even if you don't do it perfectly, like there's such a fear of like, what if I miss this perfect person? I didn't do it perfectly. I stopped signing in for 3 weeks. I don't even know how many messages I didn't answer in that time. But the fact that I had 3 messages from John, and they were all polite but clear that he would like to come meet me in person, made me think, I'm gonna hand it to this guy. Like he really wants to meet me. Sure, let's give this guy a chance. And I was, like I mentioned, I felt upset, and I was just before the Blessed Sacrament. I was like, Jesus, like bring me my husband. So it was definitely in that place of openness, but I didn't know how to move forward without. I didn't quite know how to take that risk in a healthy way. But you helped make that easier for me, because right from the get-go you showed me that you were not creepily focused on me, but focused on me enough that you wanted to pursue something. So he came out to meet me. And any other online dating tips before we move on from this? Patience. We touched on that for a second, but yeah, there's an awesome prayer that I will put in the show notes, and it's like, above all, trust in the slow work of God. That like you are still becoming, you cannot be what you are until you get there. Basically, like God is trust that God is working behind the scenes in everything. And I think that's so important for online dating. Because there were some men that I did go on dates with, and I was not called to be their spouse. And it was hard for them to hear that, but I just made a rule for myself. I was like, I'm going to try to be really clear with them. And if I'm not feeling it after 1 date or 2 dates, I'm just going to tell them. I'm not sure I did it perfectly in every instance, but that's maybe another thing is if you go on a date, you meet up in person, maybe you've spent some money, invested some money into a date, or maybe time, our time is precious. You've invested something of yourself, and then it's, you just don't feel it. Like, It's okay to say no thank you. Like, the way I would word it is by saying, like, I think you are a wonderful person. I think you are a fantastic person, but I just don't feel a desire, or I don't feel called to move forward. Don't hide behind the excuse of like, I don't think God's calling me.
I would encourage you also, something I really think is awesome about Catholic Match is that the patron of the site is Saint Raphael, and so I would pray regularly to Saint Raphael, and it was good, like, before every message or every time I would look at somebody's profile, just to like say a little prayer, not in a desperate way, like, God, man, please let this be the one, let this dating thing be over, or whatever, I don't know. But just enjoy it and appreciate the opportunity, and just like, I don't know, I can't say enough, like, just have fun with it, and offer it to God, and He's gonna do beautiful things with it.
Yeah. And I think that even points to a deeper underlying potential issue is, do I want my vocation so that I can just feel a sense of safety, or am I happy in myself right now? And there's a lot to be said about joyful singlehood, about giving yourself to others. And then there were definite moments where I was like, you know what, I'm being taken on a date today by someone. I don't know what this person is going to be like, but maybe it's overused to say like embrace the adventure, but this is an opportunity to get to know someone, and we tend to kind of go to extremes in our mind. Like, if this isn't my husband, then I'm wasting time. It's like, no, you might learn something about yourself. You might make a wonderful friend. this might be painful, it might be risky, you might lose something, but you're also going to gain, who knows what you're going to gain. You don't know what you're going to gain yet.
Sure.
Which is beautiful.
As a guy too, once it comes down to like the in-person portion of the dating experience, it can be hard, I think. You might either be nervous or just like not know exactly what your purpose is on the first date.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying I did this perfectly, but strive to just be a gentleman in the sense, not simply that you're like holding doors for the girl and stuff like that, definitely do that, but make your focus to try to put them at their ease, make them comfortable, and just like give them as enjoyable and peaceful an experience as you can for the day. Like make that your job. Like I'm just gonna treat this girl to a nice day, you know, the best way you can, and like make that your purpose. It's good for guys to know their purpose, to feel a purpose, and to pursue that, and that'll put you more at ease, I think, and facilitate like a deeper connection.
That was really good. Yeah. And you did it really well on our first date. Although he did make a really big mistake, and I think this is worth talking about. You're never going to live this down. Sorry, honey.
I wonder which one it is.
There's only one on the first date, which is that he showed up an hour and a half late. So John had to drive through New York City. He came from Pennsylvania, through New York City to Long Island to meet me. And he didn't have a cell phone at that point. And I was like, he was like, I don't have a cell phone, so I'm gonna whatever. And he's like, but basically you can't call me. And I was like, what is this? Who is this weirdo? And of course, now that was one of those like early on, I was like, red flags must work through. Like, who is this man coming out to see me? I was like, does he see a social outcast? What is going on? So he couldn't call me to tell me that he was going to be late. He only had maps. He did not have GPS. And so he got terribly, terribly lost and late. And I think you've told me many times about how you were sweating.
Harlem's a beautiful part of town. It turns out.
Harlem is gorgeous, and there was you were sweating buckets and saying a lot of Hail Marys going up and down the...
I think I was all the way down to like 62nd Street or something. At my furthest from where I was supposed to be. Yeah, it was ugly.
Oh my gosh, you should have taken the 59th Street Bridge. Anyway, it's all water under the bridge. Yeah. Hey, that was good. Good job, me. So he finally made it out to Long Island, and I had packed us a picnic lunch. I went ahead and ate the picnic lunch. I was feeling pretty spicy at that point, because I was like, this guy, he doesn't even have a cell phone. Where is he? He's showing up late. How inconsiderate of him to not even call. And I had taken a dance class that morning. I was really hungry, and I was like, I'm just going to eat this lunch that I packed for us. You know, forget you. And then he shows up, and I took my sweet time going downstairs to get the door. And John, the first words he said to me, I'll never forget this. You turned around, and you had your backpack on your back, and you just like turned around and you just like hung your head, and you were like, I am so sorry. And I saw your face, and I was like, oh, he's so attractive. And I was like, oh, he really is so sorry. Like, it was just such sincerity that I was like, I'm sure in that moment it went from, oh my gosh, you've wasted my time. You're so like inconsiderate. Like, forget you. I set aside my whole afternoon. I waited for you for lunch. I packed us a lunch, and now you're so inconsiderate. And in that little moment, just your sincerity and your sweetness, I could see. Yeah, it was like he has a story to tell me about. He has a good reason. was my thinking.
Yeah, it was a good place to start, because I knew I could only go up from there. Honestly, that's good.
Yeah. So on our first date, we went for a very long walk. John was I think one thing that I really appreciated was that you didn't seem to have an agenda. You were just genuinely interested in me and what I wanted to talk about. And you were also really good at asking a lot of open-ended questions about me. We went walking and ended up at the beach on Long Island, and you drew a picture of me. And just along the way, I just felt so peaceful. And I remember you offered then to take me to dinner, and you said, yeah, well, we can go anywhere you want. And I love that. Like I know sometimes there's some girls want a guy to plan out a date so that you don't have to tell them what you want. Mm-hmm. I appreciated hearing, let's go wherever you want. Or I can, and I think the understanding too is that you would pick a place if I wanted you to.
Sure.
But yeah, just really putting me at my ease. And I remember walking away from our first date, well, okay, the moment before our first date ended, it's like, if this goes terribly, I'll just tell him, like, yeah, I have to go to Mass, I'll see you later. But if it goes well, I can be like, hey, would you like to come to Mass with me? I don't want to be duplicitous or anything, but I was like, I have no idea who this guy is.
Sure.
So I did invite you to Mass with us, and then we were saying goodbye in the dark, and I think we gave each other a hug or something like that, and
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, and then they thought you handled this really well. You said, like, what was the wording? You said something like, if I don't want to miss an opportunity, or you said, when are you free next? Because I don't want to miss an opportunity to see you again, if you would like.
I might have even brought up, it was fortunate that my brother was going to be taking a trip out to Long Island in about a month in the future. And so I said, I told her that, and I said, I would hate to miss an opportunity to see you if you'd be willing to see me again. So.
Yeah, and it was nice because I felt invited without feeling like, I felt like he's going to make it happen. He's going to come see me again. I don't at this point have to start moving my life away to be with him. I don't have to chase after him. He's coming to me. But at the same time, there was the understanding that, like, if you don't want that, that's totally okay. Which I think was
even if you don't have a brother, you can use that and just say, I know this guy who may or may not be my brother, and he may or may not be coming out here in a month.
Yeah, and yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Just giving him the lines. Good job. And so I at that point, I wasn't sold on the fact that you were my future husband at that point, because I remember walking back into the into my home and saying, like, what a nice boy, like what a great guy, like just like what a sweet boy, like he's really. And at this point, John, you had no job.
I was younger than her, so.
You're 2 years younger than I am, so that's really awkward.
I was a boy.
You were but a boy. I was 26, he was 24 when we met, which I still haven't quite gotten over, the fact that I'm 2 years and 1 month older than you. For that 1 month of the year when I'm 3 years older than you, it's like a very awkward time in my life. I just feel like very wrong. But we're moving past it as we get older. So anyway, I really felt, I felt like I felt very much at peace. And I was like, what a lovely feeling. Like, I didn't feel like I didn't have to do any mental gymnastics to process anything that you'd said. Everything, you were so sweet and sincere. You didn't have a job, and because you'd been taking care of your grandma for 1.5 years. And so normally that's like a kind of a red flag for a lot of women. It's like, are you ready to get married if you don't even have a job? But the reason you didn't have a job was because your grandma had been sick and you had just been her full-time caretaker for 1.5 years, which was about the best reason that I could think of for anybody to not have a job. So I was like, let's just see where this goes. And then our second date was a month later, and you did come out to Long Island with your brother.
Yeah.
And this was kind of a litmus test. I was having 25 actors from New York City out to my home on Long Island for a Memorial Day party. And I was like, if he can be around these people, because I knew you were very soft-spoken and quiet, and so I was like, if he can handle himself around these people, I was like, I'm not going to babysit him. I've had to do that with guys before. I'm not going to take him around and make him feel okay. I'm just going to let him be who he is, and he's going to come to this party with all of these people. And if he can handle that, if he has a good time, then we might be going somewhere. Because with me, I'm a lot. I'm an extrovert. I'm very talkative.
Sure.
And you did beautifully. You were.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. For the second date, we went to a winery, and then we had the party, and this was a moment where I was like, this guy's got it going on. You were like, what can I do to help, is what you kept saying throughout the night. And you stayed up, I think, till 3 a.m. with me cleaning up after the party, right? Those were the days when we stayed up late.
Yeah.
Right?
And then I remember waking up at 5:30 the next morning, just thinking wow, was it all a dream? Yeah, good times. Good times.
So I was the first girl that John ever dated, went on a date with.
Yeah.
And at the time, you've told me before that you would have married me on the first date, or you would have, if you had the choice between never seeing me again and marrying me after that first date, you would have married me.
Yeah.
Is that right?
For sure.
Yeah. So you kind of knew. You knew right away.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
How did you...
How could you not?
There have been plenty who haven't.
You're blind.
You're so sweet. So how did you sort of... One thing that I thought was just so impressive about the way you handled everything was, it took me a long time. It took me 3 months to realize that you were, also the one I wanted to marry. in that time, long time, haha. In that time, how did you stay really patient while also giving the freedom to say no if that wasn't what I wanted? How did that go for you?
Cool. So I was going to say, with the date that I had already set up, approaching that in the same way, like I was already super attracted to Stacey and excited about that potential relationship. But just knowing that like this is a blessing to be able to spend an afternoon with another like sister in Christ and to try to put her at her ease and give her, an enjoyable afternoon. And that's how I approached it, and it was great. It was just like really enjoyable for both of us. And at the end of it, I actually mentioned like I had a date with somebody between when I set this up with you and today, and does that make sense?
Oh, meaning like on our first date you told me that you had a date with another person?
On my date with this other girl, I mentioned that that I had met you and was like pretty interested in pursuing that, and she was like, that's totally fine, like if it doesn't work out, let me know. And I was like, that sounds great. So yeah, that was good. So yeah, like I don't think it would have been wrong for me at that point to continue to go on dates, but I just wasn't interested at that point. I was like, I really wanted to pursue Stacey, and so it's like your own call. Like, do you feel impelled to pursue somebody exclusively? If you do, go with that and offer that to God, and He'll work with that, I think. But you were asking about like the 3 months, because we were long distance at the time.
We were, until we got married.
Yeah, and so I guess like, so I saw my job at that point as pursuit, I guess, like pursue Stacey, and so it's a little weird. Your job as a guy is to pursue someone, to let them know that they're being pursued, but also to let them know that they're totally free. And that's a balancing act, but it's really good. It's a pretty sweet, job to have as a guy.
Yeah.
To try to balance that, and
it's hard. It takes a lot of bravery and so much courage, because you might lose everything. You might invest 6 months in someone and then they say no. But at the same time too, it's kind of the only way to do it, I feel, because if you're going to have a marriage, it has to be for the right reasons, and it has to be free, free, total, faithful, fruitful.
Yeah, definitely.
And so setting that up right from the get-go is beautiful. Yeah.
And also recognizing that like every good gift that God gives you, like the afternoon I spent with Stacey was such a gift and so precious and wonderful, and to receive that, like in my relationship with God, to receive that as like an opportunity to offer that to Him in whatever way He wants it, and to be really grateful for that, because like the more precious the gift, the more precious the offering you can make to God. And as it started to build and grow, and I was more and more in love with Stacey, knowing that like even if this goes the way that I don't want it to go, like this is amazing that I get to offer this to God, and He's going to do marvelous things with whatever that is, that offering or that relationship. So
Right. Yeah. I think it's so easy when you love someone or really like someone to say, just to want to put ownership on it and to start to say, I'm entitled to this. You want that security to come along with that. And it's so hard not to have that security before you have, the real, before you fully know what something is, when you're still exploring it. Yeah. And I think in our relationship that culminated in a moment where I almost broke up with you.
Yeah.
Which we should probably talk about. So we were 3 months into our relationship, and John invited me to go on vacation with his family to the beach for a couple of days. That was a pretty big move, actually. We'd only been dating a month and a half or 2 months at that point. Like a month. It was a month.
My family's a little bit like, that's kind of weird, man. You hardly know this girl. And we'd been going to the beach every year since I was a little kid, and it was just the family. We'd never invited friends or anything, so I had some convincing to do, but
you did a good job. Yeah.
Thank you.
It was neat. I got to meet his grandma, and so I'm going out packing to get ready to go to the beach, super excited, and like, oh man, we could not wait to see each other. I was so happy and excited. And I was living in this place that had 4 chapels. It was this amazing young adult community. And so I went to the chapel and I was praying and I was trying to offer, our relationship, our budding relationship to the Lord. And I got this kind of vision of myself in a habit, which, if you guys know my story, I discerned religious life. And I was done with that part of my life. I felt, that door to my heart had closed. At one point it had been wide open and I was so excited to go to a convent. But it had closed now and I was so excited to pursue John. And it was horrible. It was like, God, why are you bringing this up now when I'm falling in love with this man who is like the best looking guy I've ever seen in my life and seems to have like a really, amazing family, and like I could just see our future together. And again, it was that desire to like put ownership on something. And then there was this feeling like, well, maybe God is just saying, nope, I'm cutting you off at the knees. Like, this is your sacrifice to me. This is your offering to me. And I'm like, God, why are you taking this away from me? But I still knew in the big picture, pursuing wisdom, pursuing the big picture and all of this, I knew that if we were going to get married, it had to be for the right reasons. And so I said, okay, God, I will go to the convent if you want me to. And I knew I had to tell John, like, I don't know what is up right now. My heart is not in this at all, but I feel like God might be asking me to be open to religious life. So I went to the beach and we sat down on the sand, and the first moment that we had to be alone, I just kind of told you, we were sitting exactly like we are now, minus the holding hands part. And maybe we were, I don't know. But I told you what was on my heart, and you just listened really, really beautifully. I'm sure it was not what you were expecting to hear. Like if you had sat down and told me that, there would have been a lot to work through as far as just like, but you're on vacation here with me. Let's just forget about this. What about my feelings? What about my, desires or something? But you didn't have any of that in your eyes or in your manner. And you were just you just said very simply, like, I love you and I want what's best for you. And, if God wants you to be a nun, I don't own you. I'd be so happy to help you get there if that's what God wants for you. And I still, to this day, don't know how anyone could have the courage to take that kind of a risk, because it was so immediate and it was so full, your surrender of our relationship. And what was so good, ultimately, of course, I wasn't meant to give you up. I was meant to marry you. And I think that moment served a purpose. It wasn't the purpose that I thought. I thought that maybe I was going to go be a nun, and that was the purpose of that vision. But the purpose of the vision was to offer our relationship to God, was for me to say to God, I will give this to you if you want me to. And for John to have an opportunity to say to God, I want this for the right reasons, and to prove your character, that you were strong enough to do hard things for me, which you have done many hard things for me in our almost 4 years of marriage. Yeah, we've had 2 babies less than a year apart, and it has been quite difficult. We've moved 4 times. We've changed jobs, had 2 children, bought a house. There's been a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of opportunities to give. And so you started that before we ever had children, before we ever got engaged.
Thank you. That was actually way easier. Having kids is tough, man.
Yeah, having kids is hard. Yeah, we should probably talk about
that.
It's
great, but it's...
Yeah. The physical exhaustion of having children, first of all.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of reiterating what you said, especially with something like having kids, especially with something like having our kids, like you almost have to start with that offering,
Yeah.
And even if you feel like you offered it well at that point, the kids are going to show you the ways that you haven't offered it quite completely, the ways that you're not pure, or the ways that you are selfish, or that kind of thing.
Yes.
Anyway, so it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all really good, but sometimes it doesn't feel.
Yeah, totally. And I think, probably most of my viewers or listeners to this show are people who are serious about their faith, and they understand that your vocation is your gift. It's not something that exists to serve you. You exist to serve it, to give yourself away. And in that sense, marriage is such a full gift. Like, there is no vocation that is easier. Truly, I wake up some mornings and I'm like, it would be so much easier to be a nun. And I really do think that sometimes. Of course, it's not easier to be a nun. Nuns have their own battles to go through. But just in terms of the amount of service that I have to do, the number of times that I have to rise above myself and say, I would rather do this right now, but my children need this right now, or my husband needs this, is extraordinary. You know, I used to think it would be so hard to be in one of those orders where they get up in the middle of the night to pray, or get up super early to pray. Well, how many times have I gotten up at 3 a.m. to feed the baby? How many times have I been up 4 times a night to feed our kids? And I don't mean to say like it's miserable or anything, because it's so joyful and so beautiful and so good. But I think it's so interesting. Like, you can look back at our dating and you can say the structure of being self-gift had to be there all along. Like, right from that first date, the moment of our first interaction and forming our family charism, forming who we are now as a couple, started in those early days. And so often, I think, you know, even if you are super serious about your faith and have good intentions, you can focus on the wrong things. It's so hard to know what to focus on. Like, I know this stuff is not easy, but the fact that, you know, John showed his character throughout our discernment of marriage and had that opportunity to do hard things, even while we were still having so much fun getting to know each other, and the fact that he was able to put me at my ease and make this sort of a comfortable experience for me dating him was something that has, you know, there's a continuity that carried through into our marriage. I would say a hallmark of our relationship for me was peace. Yeah. What was the moment when you kind of, well, let's see. How did you feel like a call to marry me, if you don't mind my asking? Like, what did that feel like to you?
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a similar question is, did I feel called to marriage, or did I feel called to Stacey? Like, did I feel called
that's a good
to marriage
question
outside
too.
of Stacey?
Let's do that one.
But I want to kind of answer them both together. And yeah, I didn't feel particularly called to marriage. My experience of feeling called to marriage came in the form of just like really being attracted to you and having a lot of peace in the pursuit of you. And at that point, I wasn't feeling called in any other direction. I didn't suspect that I was called to be a priest or be a monk at that point in a specific way. So I was just like, God, this is what you've given me. These are the desires that I'm feeling and working with. I'm gonna offer them to you as best I can and ask you to purify them, and if they're not pure, you know, lead me elsewhere, or whatever you want to do. I'm gonna like work with what you've given me here, and just follow that to the altar, basically all the way to the altar. And I never got to the point before the altar where I was like, I'm definitely called to this. And I think it's good to preserve that kind of detachment and stay open as much as you can to God's voice directing you wherever He wants to put you. And then like once you say I do, it's like, now it's, you know, a next chapter. Now you know what your job is. Right. Now you know what you are called to at this moment and for the rest of your life. So yeah. And there's so much grace. I was amazed by that. Like, I could feel the grace of the sacrament. Up until that moment, I hadn't known what that was going to be like, and I'd always kind of struggled a little bit to see. I was like, am I so flaky that I can never commit to anyone? You know, I've never committed to a job for more than a couple of years. I've never committed to a relationship for more than a couple of years. How do I know that I can do this my whole life? That grace was real, and like gave me the ability to do heroic things that I would never have been able to do without it. And I'm not saying that like I'm a hero, but like God working in you when you say yes, when you say I do, God does give you that grace. He does bless that marriage. And I know there's a big fear of marriage with a lot of people in our generation, and that's understandable if you've seen the divorce rates. But at the same time too, if you enter into it with that mentality, with that knowledge that there is going to be a lot of grace, it will be there for you. I notice it's also scary, even for me now. Like, the idea of being married is kind of scary sometimes when I see. When I see myself.
I know my hair looked really weird this morning, but I didn't realize it was scaring you. I'm so sorry.
Like, when I see myself and my own fallenness, and I'm like, I'm supposed to love a human, you know, like I'm supposed to give myself completely to a human, like me. And that's, I've recognized though that like that's exactly the way you should approach it, is not to imagine that you're marrying somebody who's perfect, or somebody who should be perfect, or try to close your eyes to weaknesses or imperfections or faults or failures or whatever. Like if those existed, you should love them less or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's like, acknowledge that they are just as weak as you and just as fallen as you, and really love them in that, and like look at how much Christ loves you and be like, I want to do that for somebody else.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. We were just talking with our spiritual director this week about discerning a particular issue, discerning a particular opportunity that we have, and I love that he said, don't expect there to not be tension in your relationship. Like, if what you're expecting is perfection, you're going to be disappointed. You are going to disappoint each other. It's just part and parcel of being a human. Where so to just give yourself permission to say, there is going to be tension. You are going to want one set of things. I'm going to want one set of things. We are individuals, but to keep praying through that. And I think that was such beautiful, good, solid advice, because I think I had this idea in my mind that we need to be perfectly on the same page. We need to have exactly the same dreams. We need to dream together in the same way, in the way that I want you to. And the whole point is, you're not going to do it in the way that I want you to, but that's okay. God is going to step in and fill in the gaps there when we ask him to, and when we give each other just a lot of grace and a lot of patience, and give ourselves a lot of patience. And that has proven to be true in every challenge that we've come through together. I want to go back a little bit to the discerning marriage question about feeling called. Feeling called to marriage. What is that? As I mentioned before, I had already felt called to marriage before I met John, and I knew that was the vocation that God was calling me to, or at least I very strongly suspected it. And then when I met John, it was all, it started off with okay, is he a weirdo because he doesn't have a cell phone? And then I met him in person. I was like, wow, he's a really wonderful person, but I need more information. He came out to visit me again. We kept seeing each other, kept making time to see each other, and everything felt peaceful in a way that it never had in a dating relationship before. First of all, not that this is an indication that you're supposed to marry someone, but we just found the most beautiful nature together in our dating relationship. It was like John would suggest a place, and we'd show up, and it would be the most resplendent beauty that I could possibly imagine. It just felt like God was laying that path for us.
Perfect weather too. Every date until at least our 10th date, it was just absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. It again, these are much less important than the essence of it.
Right,
you know what I mean?
It's just like little, I don't know, encouragements along the way that God can give you.
Right.
And don't put too much weight on them, but
right.
receive them for what they are, which is just a gift.
It was a gift, exactly. I felt like the whole thing was a gift. And again, there was that human tendency to want to put a title on it, to want to move to the next step right away. But I think in our dating relationship, I did savor every moment so thoroughly. I had scheduled this trip before we even met. I had scheduled a trip to Europe. I had been promising myself I was going to go to Europe all through my 20s, and I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I did. I had my plane ticket booked, and John knew that I was going to be gone for 3 weeks. And so I went, and saying goodbye to go to Europe was hard. It was hard knowing that I wasn't going to see you for 3 weeks. That was going to be the longest I hadn't seen you. And when I was in Europe, all I could think about was you. All I could think about was, I want John to be here with me. Wouldn't this be so wonderful if John could come here with me? And yeah, it was that was confirmation to me, was I would love to have this person by my side right now. I prefer that to being alone. I would prefer to be, in his company than to be alone. And so I came back feeling very certain that, that you were the one I was going to marry. And I remember a particular moment just praying and sitting on this hillside in Italy in a little town, and journaling and praying to the Lord. And I just felt a very, a deep peace. I just imagined my life for the rest of my life. And something fell into place, and I said, yes, this is exactly the man. This is the one I want to have by my side. And it felt completely just full of desire, and also full of peace, and and maybe someone who is called to marry someone doesn't feel that all, my experience maybe isn't going to be your experience. Maybe you're going to enter into, maybe you're going to have a fight the night before you get engaged, and that doesn't mean you're not called to marry that person. It doesn't mean that you are conflict free. I think just in my story, just take it for what it is. It was just a feeling where all the pieces seemed to fall into place. And then I went home from Europe I was visiting my family down in Virginia, and that was your first opportunity to meet them, was 5 months after we met. And on that weekend, the first time you'd met my parents, you asked my dad if you could marry me, which was bold. So bold. And it was interesting because my mom and I knew like what you guys were talking about on the porch, and my mom looked at me and she's like, "Are you ready to move forward with this guy?" She just wanted to take care of me, make sure that like I was on board with this. And with every previous relationship, every guy I had brought home, I'd had 5 boyfriends, brought them home to meet my family, and each time I did, it was like, let's see how he does. Like, I'm like watching, kind of like from this outside perspective, like, ooh, if he gets along with my family, then that's a good sign. If he doesn't get along with my family, then, run away. But with you, I just had the sense that maybe John and my family, maybe they're not going to click. Maybe there's going to be something that comes up that's a little bit awkward or embarrassing or just not quite perfect, ideal, whatever. Maybe he's going to think my family's a lot to handle because we're Italian and we're loud. But even so, even if that's the case for this weekend, I know that ultimately my family's going to love John and he's going to love my family. And this isn't a test of whether or not a relationship is going to move forward. I'm already at a place of peace in my heart about this. And so when my mom was like, "How do you feel about, marrying him? Are you ready to like get engaged?" And I just looked at her and said, "Yeah, I'm ready." And cool. It wasn't a, "Hey, well, what do you think, Mom? Let me get your input here." Which is, I think we should rely on our close friends and family for advice. Absolutely. But this was the first time in my life where I just felt that, that certainty. So, yeah.
Thank you, for saying all that. Going back to the point you made just prior to that, you were talking about how leading up to our marriage, there was a lot of peace and a lot of
excitement.
Yeah, excitement and that kind of thing. And the presence of like conflict or anxiety even doesn't necessarily mean that you're not called to do it or it's not best.
Right.
And it's just a really hard thing to discern, and there's no, easy answer in doing that. You just have to do your best. But like, it helps, I think, to acknowledge, like God can tell different people at different times that like this spouse or this potential spouse, isn't perfect, and you have to love them in their imperfection. That's your job. And so like, to acknowledge that primarily you're not called to this person necessarily, you're called to love. And so like, even if there is anxiety, even if the relationship isn't perfect, like even if you wind up with somebody that's maybe at times doesn't feel like the right one, like maybe you're not totally confident about it, know that like your first job is to love and to love them.
Yes.
And just like look for opportunities to love.
Yeah, do the right thing no matter what. And in that, the right answer for you will become clear, because what God wants for you is for you to be happy. Like his deepest desire for you is your deepest desire. If there's any advice I could give my single self, it would be just like, be patient. What is coming, the goodness of this person, you don't even know. Like, I got caught up so many times in, why doesn't this guy like me? Why isn't there anyone who's liking me right now? What is God playing tricks on me? And I know it sounds so hard. It's so easy to say and it's so hard to live, but like, just don't worry, because what's coming is so much better. And there were relationships that I used to try to make them work when they weren't moving in a good direction, and I would just hang on, and I would stress about them and obsess about them. And the fact was that just I was not at peace. Your vocation has to be livable. You have to wake up every morning and say, I want to be with you more than I want to be alone. And some days I never don't want to be with you, but some days, like with just the challenges of family life, I would love to be alone. My fantasy is to have a desert island that John's going to buy me for my birthday, and I get to go there and nobody's going to be there.
Which birthday?
This one. This upcoming birthday.
Should give me a little bit more notice on that.
Just start saving your pennies. It's going to be fine. The demands are real, and certainly the desire to be alone is often real, but at the same time too, we were just saying this morning, we're on this beautiful little getaway, and it's like so good to step back and just date each other and say, wow, the grandeur and the beauty of God's adventure for us is so good and beautiful, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And even the beauty of the single life, I look back and I'm like, I had so much beauty in that time that I didn't appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't appreciate the fact that I could go out for 3-hour coffee dates with my friends, and I didn't have to like apologize to a babysitter or like drop, you know, $30 for a babysitter in order to be able to go out for a coffee date with my friend. Like things that I had then that I didn't appreciate, you know, I would tell my single self, enjoy those.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anything? Let's see. Well, we should probably wrap this up. Yeah. Just I guess one final thing I wanted to point out about our wedding was, and this is going along with everything that we said before, was instead of doing a garter toss, you did a really beautiful thing for me, which I think my mom told you about. You want to tell us what that was?
Sure. Yeah. Garter toss is just kind of weird. Don't do that.
No judging anyone who does a garter toss. It's a tradition that people do, and it's fine. That's great.
But it's fun. But so we did a foot washing, and I guess I hadn't told you about it beforehand. No. We had just set it up with Stacey's mom and the maid of honor, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, just washed her footsies, and it was pretty cool. She has beautiful foots, and you just like taking a time out from the celebration to remind yourself and your spouse, I guess especially yourself, that like this is about serving you and making myself your servant.
Yeah, I would have, if we had planned it beforehand, I would have washed her feet too. But I think I was so surprised by it in the moment that I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that just because, like, I don't know, I was too busy kissing your head as you were washing my feet.
I wouldn't have wanted that.
Oh, really?
It would have been awkward for me.
Well, I think
also, I don't know. Yeah. Like, I don't know super strong opinions about it, but like Christ washed the apostles' feet, but the apostles didn't wash Christ's feet. I don't think you want them to. I mean, like, I don't know.
Well, there's a beautiful symbolism there as the husband as being the head of the family,
right.
You know, serving, laying his life down for his wife, and
and there's like, we're mutually each other's servants, but I think, I don't know, for some reason I feel like the man, it's more appropriate to do it in a more public way for the man than for the women.
Cool.
Not sure, just a thought.
Yeah. Either is beautiful, though. Some couples do wash each other's feet, and that is beautiful.
Sure.
So yeah, without getting into too many specifics of like, how dare you wash each other's feet? Right. So thanks for joining us for this episode. You know, if you have questions, please reach out on my website, staceysumereau.com. We'd be so happy to answer questions about marriage in a future episode. I'll have to have you back, John.
See if I'm available.
You know, or leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube. And we're just thrilled that you joined us today. You know, don't be afraid of God's adventure. If you're called to marriage, it is a good and a beautiful and a holy and wonderful adventure and gorgeous vocation.
Have fun and don't be a sissy.
That's the tagline of this episode. Have fun and don't be a sissy.
Cool.
Featuring John Sumereau. All right, God bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching or listening, and we'll catch you next time on Caffeinated.
Cool.
I love you. Thank you.
Thanks. That was fun.
That was fun.